She was mopping the lobby floor when the CEO overheard her speaking Mandarin, Spanish, and French fluently. What happened after that stunned the entire organization. Most employees barely noticed the cleaning staff at Halberg International, not out of disrespect, but routine. They showed up after business hours, pushing carts, emptying bins, wiping down tables, fading into the background like ambient noise. It was a Monday morning in downtown Fort Worth, Texas, and the lobby was alive with footsteps echoing on tile, fingers tapping screens, voices trading updates, and hands gripping coffee like it carried the secret to success. Jonathan Kellerman, the CEO, was midway through his walk from the parking garage to the 18th floor executive office when he heard something. A voice, but not just any voice. It was fluent, clear, and speaking a language he had not heard since visiting the company's Shanghai branch. Mandarin. He froze. Not because it was Mandarin, but because of who was speaking it. He looked around, expecting to see one of the international sales reps in early. Then he spotted her. A woman in a burgundy janitor uniform, her short twists tied neatly, in a ponytail, standing by the touchscreen lobby directory. She was in mid-conversation with an older man in a navy coat and thick glasses who looked both confused and thankful. She gestured gently, her tone steady and kind, directing him toward the elevators. Kellerman narrowed his eyes. He recognized her from late nights in the hallways, always courteous, always quiet, never spoke unless addressed. He had never learned her name, but here she was, confidently translating and giving directions in a language most Americans struggled to pronounce. He took a step forward slowly. As he approached, she wrapped up the Mandarin exchange and turned to a delivery worker holding a clipboard. She spoke again, this time in Spanish without missing a beat. The delivery man blinked. Sí, gracias. And just as smoothly, she turned toward a vendor standing nearby, examining a group of mismarked packages. C'est mal marqué. Duh. Conférence B, par l'autre côté, she said in French, pointing softly with a small smile. Kellerman's jaw tightened, not from frustration but from something heavier. Guilt. He had spent over 20 years in global logistics, led international, growth-hired language experts, launched cultural training. And yet, here in his own building, the most multilingual person he had met in months had been cleaning restrooms just 2 floors below. He stepped in, less as a boss, and more as someone genuinely intrigued. Excuse me. She turned to face him, surprised but calm. Yes, sir. He gave a faint smile. That was Mandarin, right? Yes, sir. You speak it fluently? Yes, and Spanish, French. She nodded. Also Portuguese, German, Arabic, Italian, Swahili. I can read Latin, but I do not really count that. He blinked. You are telling me you speak 9 languages? Yes, sir. There was no boasting in her tone, no pride, just a plain statement of fact. He looked at her, taking in the reality that someone who had been quietly mopping his building's floors was possibly the most talented linguist he had met in years. Every night felt like a walking United Nations. What is your name? He asked at last. Denise Atwater. Miss Atwater, are you available for a few minutes? Her brow lifted slightly. Right now? Yes, I would like to speak with you in my office. He noticed a flicker of hesitation. Not fear exactly, but that natural pause people have when they are used to being overlooked or undervalued. She gave a slow nod. All right. He pressed the elevator button and held the door as she stepped. Inside. Inside the elevator, a quiet moment passed. I have worked here for 13 years, she said suddenly, as they ascended toward the executive floor. He turned to look at her. Never thought I would be asked to come up here. He offered a small, reserved smile. You might be surprised how fast things can change, but he had no idea just how much was about to shift. For her and for him. The elevator chimed. Denise stepped out first, her steps light on the polished wood of the executive hallway. The air smelled like citrus and leather. If wealth had a scent, this was it. Kellerman's assistant looked up, wide-eyed at the sight of Denise beside him. He said nothing, just nodded for her to let them pass. Inside the glass-walled office, he gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Please, have a seat." She sat down with care, folding her hands in her lap, her eyes slowly scanning the room. She was not impressed, just observant. Behind him, a large world map filled with pins marked different countries. On the side table, a tray of espresso cups, a picture of his 2 daughters, and an old award from a trade event in Brussels. Kellerman sat across from her, leaning in slightly. "So, Denise, I will be honest. I did not expect to have this conversation today." She gave a quiet nod, her posture firm, her expression unreadable. "But I just heard you speak 3 languages. Like it was nothing, and I need to know. How does someone like you end up working here, cleaning floors?" She was silent for a moment, her eyes shifting briefly to the window, then back to him. "You want the truth? I would not have asked otherwise." She let out a breath. "All right then." She rubbed her palms together, almost like she was warming up the words. "I was born in Toledo, Ohio, only child. My dad was a pipe fitter. My mom worked as a nurse's aide. We didn't have much, but they pushed school like it was everything." She paused. "I got a full scholarship to Kent State, studied linguistics, was halfway through a master's when my mother got sick." She stopped again. "I came back home to care for her. Then my dad had a stroke and passed 6 months later. After that, everything just broke apart." She tilted her head a little, like she was replaying the past before continuing. "I had a baby, no money, no partner who stayed. So I took whatever jobs I could get, grocery stores, care homes, temp work. Eventually, a janitorial supervisor here offered me night shifts. It allowed me to pick up my daughter from school, keep the lights on. That is how I ended up here." Kellerman listened quietly, not blinking. "But the languages, I never stopped studying. I borrowed textbooks, listened to audio lessons, read newspapers in 5 languages. Just to stay sharp. That is what I do. It is the only thing I do that reminds me I still matter." Her voice stayed steady. Nothing about it felt rehearsed or polished. It was just real. "Most people never ask," she added. "They see the uniform and just assume." That last word lingered in the room. Assume. Kellerman leaned back in his chair, her story sitting heavy in his chest like a stone. She took a small breath to continue. "Look, Mr. Kellerman," she said, her voice steady. "I am not sharing this to make anyone feel bad. I am not angry. Life just unfolded the way it did. I did what I had to do. Still do. But you asked. That's the truth." He let out a slow breath. Denise Atwater was sharp. That was clear now. But she was not looking for sympathy or a break. She was simply being honest, plain, direct, and quietly moving. "Have you ever thought about doing something different?" he asked. She gave a slight shrug. "Sometimes, but it is tough to imagine more when the rent is due." Silence filled the room again. But this time, it carried more weight, something real and hard to name. Kellerman picked up his notebook and scribbled a few lines. "What are you writing?" she asked, calm but a bit curious. He glanced up. Ideas, but one idea in particular, was already starting to take shape, and it was not a small one. The conversation stayed with him the rest of the day. Even during budget meetings and vendor updates, Jonathan Kellerman kept returning to that morning, to Denise Atwater, her composed voice and the way she had listed 9 languages like it was routine. That level of fluency did not come easy. It came from years of effort, focus, and drive. Around 3:45 p.m., he left the top floor and took the elevator to the building's service level. He wanted to see something firsthand. The air down there was warmer, the walls marked up from carts and boots. He passed by maintenance teams, break rooms, and pallets of bottled water before reaching the janitorial supply room. Through the open door, he spotted Denise stacking microfiber cloths on a shelf. "Hope I am not interrupting," he said as he stepped inside. She turned, a little surprised. "You came down here?" He nodded with a slight smile. "I could not get our conversation out of my head. I have a favor to ask." She wiped her hands on her shirt. "What kind of favor?" "There is a meeting upstairs. A team from the São Paulo office arrived early, and our translator canceled last minute. Can you help? She paused only briefly. Portuguese? Yes, I can do that. Minutes later, they walked into conference room 4C. 4 Brazilian executives were seated, scrolling their phones. Denise entered quietly, gave a polite nod, and began speaking in calm, fluent Portuguese. Kellerman watched as the energy in the room shifted. Tension eased. People made eye contact. She was not just translating, she was creating connection, helping people feel understood. One of the guests made a joke in Portuguese. Denise replied with her own that had them all laughing. Kellerman did not catch a word, but the meaning was clear. After about 20 minutes, the meeting ended. One of the executives turned to him and said in English, "She is better than anyone we have worked with this year. Where did you find her?" Kellerman looked over at Denise, who was already tidying up the table. "Right here," he replied. Out in the hallway, he walked beside her. "Have you ever done professional translation work before?" She shook her head. "Just helped people out at clinics, offices, things like that. No certificate. Never. Had time for school. My daughter needed me more." Kellerman nodded. "And where is she now?" "She is 26. A nurse in Tempe, paid her way through school, got her mother's stubborn streak." They both smiled. And for a moment, it was not CEO and janitor. Just 2 people, trading parts of their lives. They made their way back to the service level, and Denise clocked in again. She still had 2 more floors to finish before her shift ended. But before walking off, she said something that stuck with him. "I did not do anything special today." He looked at her, eyebrows raised. "That's not..." How it came across to her, she gave him a slight smile and walked away. That night, Kellerman sat in his car for a long while before starting the engine. His mind was full. The constant push to grow the company, investor meetings, all the ongoing conversations about diversity and hidden talent. They had spent so much time looking outward, recruiting internationally, trying to bring in fresh faces. But maybe the real value was already right there. And once you see that, the real question is, what are you going to do about it? The following morning, Denise's badge beeped at an unexpected time. She had just finished cleaning the east lobby when her supervisor, Ron, tapped her shoulder. His expression was not irritated exactly, but it was not usual either. "Hey, Denise, Mr. Kellerman wants to see you again." She blinked. "Did I mess something up?" Ron shook his head. "He did not say. Just told me to send you up." She wiped her hands with a towel and followed the same hallway as the day before. Only this time, more people seemed to notice. Those she passed looked up. Some whispered. Even the receptionist gave her a polite smile, like she knew something Denise did not. When she walked into the executive area, Kellerman was standing near the window, black coffee in hand, watching the skyline. "Come in," he said, still facing away. She waited quietly at the door until he finally turned. "I have been thinking," he began, setting the mug on a coaster, "about missed talent. How many people never get a shot? Not because they cannot do it, but because no one bothers to see them." Denise said nothing. She did not put much faith in flattery. She had heard too many promises that led nowhere. "I want to start a new role," he continued, "something that does not exist yet. But it is something we clearly need, even if we did not know it." Her eyebrows pulled together. "What kind of role?" "Cultural liaison for international affairs," he said. "Someone who knows the languages, reads situations, helps with visitors, vendors, and paperwork. All those international details we constantly stumble through." Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came. "You are more than qualified," he added. "More than a lot of people already on our leadership team, to be honest. And you have shown you can do it, with calm, care, and intelligence." She studied him, narrowing her eyes just a bit. "This real as it comes. I do not have a college degree. You have something stronger. Life experience, dedication. You speak 9 languages fluently. You think I am worried about a diploma?" She shifted, still unsure. "Why me?" He looked her in the eye. "Because yesterday before 9 a.m. I saw you solve 3 separate problems in 3 different languages, and because I am tired of walking by people like you, People doing twice the work for half the notice. Denise crossed her arms. You know what people will say. I do not care, he said. She looked at him for a long moment, then let out a slow breath. I have never had an office job, she said. Never had a title. You will pick it up quickly. I do not have clothes for this kind of thing. I will have HR send over a wardrobe allowance. She gave a quiet laugh. You really thought this through, huh? I am trying. A long silence stretched between them. Then Denise asked softly, what about my shift downstairs? Who takes over? Kellerman smiled. We will find someone, but we will not replace you. Neither of them said anything for a while. She looked down at her hands, then met his eyes again. You sure this is not some kind of charity? He shook his head. This is long overdue recognition. She bit her lip, her eyes shining, but she blinked the tears back before they could fall. All right then, she said, voice steady. Let's see what I can do. He reached out his hand. She took it. It was more than just a handshake. It was a shift in the story. But what neither of them saw coming was how the rest of the office would respond. By Wednesday, the news had spread faster than the elevators. Denise Atwater, the night janitor, had been moved up to an executive role. No one had the full details. Only rumors that she spoke many languages, that the CEO had chosen her personally, that maybe she had some kind of hidden background, maybe government, maybe something undercover. The chatter moved from desks to conference rooms. Some were curious. Some smiled and said, good for her. But not everyone was cheering. In the staff lounge, 2 marketing assistants leaned over their lunch trays. I'm just saying, one whispered. I've got a master's in international business, been waiting 2 years for a promotion. This woman was cleaning bathrooms last week. Her friend shrugged. Maybe she knows something we don't. Oh, please, it's just Kellerman trying to look modern. Tick a box. That same attitude found its way into meetings and quiet group chats. There was confusion and some quiet bitterness. People were not used to someone climbing up without using the usual steps. Denise felt it the moment she entered her new space on the 12th floor. It was simple, just a desk, a plant, and a computer she had not used yet. But to her, it felt like stepping onto another planet. After HR completed the onboarding, she asked if she could keep the night uniform, not to wear, just as a reminder. Later that day, she met Victor, head of international operations. He came in with a clipboard and a closed-off look. He did not offer a handshake. He did not sit. So, you're the new liaison, he said, sounding more like a challenge than a welcome. Denise looked up. That's what I've been told. You have any experience in corporate settings? She smiled. Only as an outside observer. He did not smile back. I've got files from Italy, contracts from Dubai, and vendor problems in Sao Paulo. Think you can handle that? She stood. I'll need some time to review, but yes. Victor dropped the folder on her desk and walked out. That evening, Kellerman stopped by. How was the first day? She leaned back in her chair and let out a breath. I've had worse, he smiled. Victor give you trouble? He doesn't scare me. I thought so. She paused, then asked, Can I ask you something? Of course. Why now? Why me? You could have just given me a bonus and moved on. He leaned on the doorframe. Because I saw myself in you. She raised an eyebrow. You were a janitor? No, but I was ignored. A lot. I grew up with nothing. My dad fixed cars in a forgotten town. I worked 3 jobs through college. People did not think I belonged in rooms like this. Denise nodded slowly. And now you decide who gets through the door. He nodded. Exactly. There was a pause. Denise looked down at the folder on her desk. I won't lie, I'm nervous. Good. That means you care. She looked up again. Some people are going to hate this. They'll adjust. Or they won't. Either way, we move forward. Kellerman stood up straight. You've got a real story, Denise. Now you've got a voice to tell it. Then he turned and left. The door clicked shut behind him. Denise looked around her office. She remembered the times she had cried in restroom stalls during lunch breaks, the nights she came home with sore feet and barely enough energy to warm up soup, the birthdays she had missed, and the promotions that went to people who never even said hello. She opened her desk drawer and placed her old janitor badge inside. Not to forget, but to remember what it had taken to reach this point. But now, this story was no longer just about her, and the spotlight was about to get a lot brighter. By the end of the week, Denise's nameplate was mounted outside her office. Black letters on brushed metal. Denise Atwater, Cultural Liaison, International. Affairs. It looked official, clean, lasting. Words spread, this time in an official way. The company-wide email arrived Friday morning, sent by Kellerman himself. It was brief, direct, and held weight. He explained her role, her background, and most importantly, her value. He did not frame it as a favor or some kind of feel-good gesture. He made it clear she was the most qualified for the role. That was it. But the talk did not stop. Some managers muttered quietly, others began to shift once they saw her work. She handled conversations with foreign clients better than any tool they had. She corrected translation errors in old contracts, mistakes that had cost the company money for years, and she never boasted. She just worked, calmly, clearly, better than anyone had expected. On Monday, she was invited to a meeting with a team from Morocco. The company's North African plans had stalled for months due to confusion and mistrust. She entered the room in a soft beige blazer, sat down, and introduced herself in fluent Moroccan Arabic. The energy in the room shifted immediately. People leaned in. They paid attention, because when someone speaks your language, it is not just about the words. It is about feeling seen and respected. After the meeting, one of the Moroccan guests approached her. He gently placed a hand on his chest, a traditional sign of gratitude. "No one has done that for us before," he said. "Not in our language. Not like that." Denise nodded. "You matter, that is all." By midweek, Kellerman made another move. He renamed the company's main training room, the space where new employees gathered for orientation and where middle managers held training sessions. The old plaque came down. In its place, the Atwater room. No big reveal, no party. Just a quiet change, one that meant far more than any flowers or cake could. Later that day, Kellerman stood outside that room, watching as a group of interns filed in. He overheard one of them whisper, "Who is that?" A senior staff member replied, "She is the one who reminded this company that talent does not always wear a suit." That same day, Denise found an envelope on her desk. No return address, just her name handwritten in block letters. Inside was a short note. It read, "I used to think I would stay invisible forever, but today I felt seen. Taller because of you, thank you." No signature, just a reminder that people were paying attention. People who needed to believe something better was possible. Denise sat there, eyes on the note, throat tight. She did not cry. She did not need to. That was the moment she understood this was not just a position. It was an opening. But not every opening stays open without effort. And someone had already decided to push back. The resistance showed up quickly. Late Thursday, Denise was asked into a meeting, not by Kellerman, but by someone above him. Eleanor Craig, a senior board member flown in from Dallas. She had been with the company since the 1990s, known for tailored suits and an even sharper tone. Denise entered a small meeting room on the 17th floor. Eleanor was waiting, papers stacked in front of her, expression blank. "Have a seat," she said without looking up. Denise sat. Eleanor tapped her pen twice. "So, Miss Atwater, I reviewed your records. You have no college education, no corporate training, and no management certifications." Denise stayed calm. "That is correct." Eleanor clasped her hands together. "You were a janitor here just 3 weeks ago." "I was." She leaned back. "Help me understand how someone with that history is now leading international operations." Denise looked directly at her. "Because I speak the languages. I know the cultures. I have already corrected 2 vendor contracts and resolved a 3-month delay in Morocco. I also helped secure a verbal deal with our Brazilian partners. Legal is finalizing it next week." Eleanor narrowed her eyes. So you believe business should run on instinct and personality? Denise gave a slight smile. No, ma'am. I believe it should run on outcomes. That made Eleanor pause. It was the first time Denise had seen her unsure. I do not need to be liked, Denise said, but I do need to bring value, and I do. Eleanor slowly stood, closing the folder. You are a risk. I am used to that, Denise replied quietly. My whole life has been one. After the meeting, Denise did not return to her desk right away. She left the building, crossed the street, and sat on a bench facing the glass tower she now worked in. She had passed that building for years, wearing a uniform, carrying cleaning supplies, wondering if anyone even noticed her. Now they all did, and not all were happy about it. She pulled out her phone and called her daughter. Hey, Ma, her daughter answered. Everything all right? Denise paused, then nodded to herself. Yes, just wanted to hear your voice. You sure? I'm sure. They spoke for a few minutes. Nothing serious. Groceries, her daughter's dog, a movie she wanted to see. Just hearing her daughter laugh helped steady her. When the call ended, Denise sat still for a while. Then she stood up, crossed the street, and took the elevator back to her floor. By morning, word of her meeting with Eleanor had made the rounds, but to everyone's surprise, Denise did not step back. She arrived early, spoke at a team meeting, and took a call with the German office. No translator, no hesitation. Focused, confident, calm. Later that day, someone had written a message on the whiteboard outside her office. We see you. No signature. Just 3 words that meant everything. In the weeks that followed, something new began to happen. People started seeking her out, not just for language help, but for input, clarity, confidence. She became the one people checked in with before pitching their ideas. She sat with interns, offering quiet advice before big moments. She helped with presentations, always treating everyone with respect. One intern, a quiet Vietnamese student named Bao, once asked her, "How did you manage to learn all those languages?" She smiled and said, "One word at a time, the same way you will." Denise was not just doing her job. She was reshaping the workplace atmosphere. One day, Kellerman joined her in the break room for coffee. "I have been hearing some great things," he said. She took a sip. "I have been trying to ignore the negative ones." "You are making an impact," he replied. She looked at him. "Is that good?" He smiled. "Around here, it usually means you are on the right path." They stood quietly for a bit. "You know," he added, "I have been thinking about launching a training program for employees in non-desk roles. There are probably more people like you in this company." She nodded. "There are. They just have not been noticed yet." He met her eyes. "Want to help me create it?" She smiled. "I have already started designing it in my head." By the end of the month, a pilot program had started. A new project called Voice Inside, focused on helping employees in different departments gain access to language classes, leadership support, and cross-department exposure. It was Denise's idea, and it took off quickly. Soon, she was invited to speak at a logistics leadership summit in Cincinnati. She shared her story, not as a feel-good message, but as a direct reminder. "I was never only a janitor," she told the audience. "I spoke multiple languages. I had the skills. I was prepared. But no one took the time to really look. So, the next time you walk past someone without a title, ask yourself, what might I be missing?" The room went still. Then the entire crowd rose in applause. As she left, a young man came up to her with tears in his eyes. "My mom works as a cleaner," he said. "She speaks 5 languages. I used to feel embarrassed about that." Denise gently touched his arm. "Never be ashamed of your roots. The only shame is refusing to notice someone's brilliance." She left that building taller than ever, not because of the recognition, not because of the role, but because she stayed true to herself. She brought every piece of her story into that space. And that made all the difference. Never assume you know someone's value based on what they wear, where they work, or what their resume says. Skill has no uniform. Knowledge does not need permission. and genius might pass you by, wearing a name badge and holding a mop. If you have ever felt unseen, underestimated, or dismissed, keep moving forward. The right person will notice. And when they do not hesitate to take your seat at the table. Better yet, bring a few more chairs with you.